Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful job. You know, my understanding is this Gold Award for Girl Scouts is the highest award that can be given to the Girl Scouts. It's equivalent to the Eagle Scout for a Boy Scout.
Correct.
Which is quite an accomplishment. And I also understand this is the first time this has been done in like a million years, it seems like, in Longview.
Pretty much a decade, yes.
A decade. That's a long time. So. What an amazing accomplishment. We thank you for your dedication, for your willingness to do something and provide such a great thing for City of Longview as well. What a great idea. Where was your inspiration for this?
So actually, it happened kind of like a fluke, unfortunately. So I was looking for ideas, and I wanted to do a faith-based project originally. But there were some kinks in the system that didn't allow me to do that. So I asked the City of Longview, with the help of my mom, annoyingly calling them over and over again, asking if there were any solutions that needed to be solved for the City of Longview. So Edie, the new solid waste manager here in Longview, she was like, well, we've been trying to work with the Longview Mall to make a recycling location, but they don't really seem to be into it, and I'm kind of afraid to ask. So I was like, well, let me help you out a little bit, see what I can do. And so what started as a dream became reality. So.
Thank you, Mom, for being persistent. You're not the only person that calls us over and over again, so don't feel bad, okay? Abby, thank you for your dedication. Thank you for all that you do. We just think the world of you and all that you are going to do in your lifetime. I can already tell just from taking this microphone. If you want to sit right there, you can. You just follow the script. You just read it. It's not a big deal. You can do this, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hold on.
Appreciate it.
Stay right here. I want all the ladies on the council to come up and have a picture with the Girl Scouts, please.
As a Girl Scout, but not an award-winning Girl Scout. But I want to appear as confident as that.
You know how athletes have managers and people that, move their career on, and I would be hers if she was an athlete. Unbelievable. Very good. Thank you so much. We're now to citizen comment. I do have one speaker card. Mr. Steve Crane.
Hello, everybody. Steve Crane, 3805 Treetop Lane here in Longview, Texas. Mayor and council, I'm here to talk about an array of issues, really, but the focus is the strategic plan. And this amphitheater issue that has come up recently, I hope it's died, and it's not going to happen. And the reason I say that is because if you look at that strategic plan, that one that we worked so hard to create and act as a guide for what we do as a city, the amphitheater was mentioned, but it's not even on the list of priorities. That strategic plan is a guide for us in how we spend our money. Now, I know sometimes we get kind of caught up in bright, shiny things, and I'm not saying that the amphitheater's well, I think it is a bad idea, to be honest with you, but if that is going to go forward, it really needs to be part of a strategic planning process. And that brings me to the second point, and that is the strategic plan in Fries and Nichols. I support the council doing the entering into a contract for Fries and Nichols. The question isn't if we should do it. The question is whether now is the right time to do it. And I noticed that the CPAC, which is the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, hasn't met at all since, I guess September of 2021. And I would suggest that this process about Fries and Nichols go to that advisory committee and let them begin the process of deciding, what do we want them to do with the help of city staff. Now, I serve currently on the Parks Board, And I want to give Mr. Karen a big shout out because he and his staff have done a wonderful job of making sure that our tax dollars in that bond election that we passed a few years ago are being spent properly. And they're doing a great job, and we should be very proud of the parks that we have and the trail system that's being developed. Now, was also on the CPAC when we were implementing the strategic plan. And there was a lot, I thought Freese and Nichols did a great job, and that's why I'm so supportive of Freese and Nichols coming back and doing it again. But I want to reemphasize the fact that I'm not sure now's the right time to do it. And I think that it really needs to go to the CPAC committee before it comes to council. So I know you have some decisions to make, and I know my 3 minutes is almost up, but I want to just tell you how much I appreciate the time and effort that you put in to try and make our city better and to listen to the citizens of Longview. Thank you.
Thank you. Have no more speaker cards. We'll move on to public safety update. Chief Boone.
Mr. Mayor, I'll bring the bar back down from those kids earlier, so make it easier for us for the rest of the night. Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. McPhee. So our July stats, our stats from last month, I want to run through those for you real quick. Our average response time for priority 1 calls throughout the city was 4 minutes and 25 seconds, so that's maintaining that sub 5 minute. And again, that's from the time that the call is created to the time that you had the first officer on scene. So we're staying within our range on that. Calls for service, we had 5,762 for last month. Traffic stops were 1,832, and we had 30 DWI cases. Pump the brakes still continues. I want to remind everybody of that. I'll tell you all a real quick story, and this one is from just last week. We were running a detail on a Friday evening, and we stopped one vehicle, and it had a younger driver, and the officer finished with that traffic stop. And later that evening, one of the other officers working that detail stops the same vehicle, not even realizing that one of the other guys had already stopped it. And now the passenger is now the driver, and the original driver is the passenger, and it's for speeding again. So I tell you this just to tell you that I'm not telling anybody how to parent. I'm just asking for help from parents. And if you've got your children, your teenagers out there, and they're driving vehicles, remember it's for the safety of them and everybody else. I know there's lots of apps out there these days where you can kind of watch speeding and so forth. And if you see that your child is going a little bit faster than what he or she should, help us and talk to them before that they have a citation or have an injury or have a wreck that causes an injury to themselves or somebody else. So just ask for a little bit of help on that as we go out there and patrol on the weekends and the other days of the week. We had our first women's safety course the last week of July, and I think it's our first one since COVID. Detective Stiles led that, and she did a great job. That top picture there, you can see the group of ladies that we had. Several of our people were from our city staff as well, so I was very appreciative to see them come out and support us for that. And then we closed with a range day on that Saturday, and we had a good time besides being a little hot. And our kickoff is that time of year again. We have our National Night Out kickoff on August 30th at the Exhibit Building. And then we also have our Citizens Police Academy that will be coming up September 8th. And I think I may even have one or two of y'all that might be interested in that, so I'll make sure I get you an application. And I still have this up there to show, but I found out today that we do have another women's safety course coming up September 12th through the 15th, but it is actually, we have all of our registrations in for that course, so it is filled. And I want to say farewell to a friend of mine, Detective Bethard, juvenile detective with 21 years of service, and he retired July 29th of this year, and but he will be staying on as a reserve for us. And lastly, I want to end with today we did have a short standoff that ended with our tactical officers taking a murder suspect into custody without incident, and that was in the 400 block of the Spur. Any questions?
Any questions for Chief Boone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chief Stillman.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Mr. McPhee. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on some activities that's happened in the fire department since our last meeting. We continue to have firefighters deployed out on the front lines around the state to help with the wildfire situation. This is where the state of Texas pulls together, and these fires are bigger than any one department in any place in the state can handle. So we all collaboratively get together and they go out as strike teams and task forces and they try to attack these fires head on. These crews have been out there. I think I've got 5 more days out, and the actual people will be coming back. The truck will stay, and we'll send new people out there to replace them to give these guys a little bit of a break, and then they'll be back on the job here in Longview shortly. But these situations in the weather situation and the wildfire situation out there just continues to get worse, and we're watching it slowly get worse in our area here, as you've seen some of our fires here locally. So we're still praying for rain. We'll take all we can get. We've been spending a lot of time, especially this month, doing some training. We train all the time on how to save others. This training is particularly targeted at how do we save each other. As firefighters, we tend to get in some pretty dicey situations, going inside burning buildings, collapsing buildings, and so forth. And so this training is focused of how do we rescue that downed firefighter. So our crews are doing a really good job doing their annual Mayday training. This is a process that we do once a year just to make sure that we're staying up on it and proficient on our skills to help out ourselves, okay? So that we can do the public a better job. We've also been highly engaged this month in Stop the Bleed training, especially with schools starting back up. A lot of the school campuses are asking for this training. Our crews are going out. I know they have another full day tomorrow. So here's an example earlier this week of some of our crews helping out at LISD doing the Stop the Bleed training. And if anyone is interested, we offer these courses at the training center. The next one coming up is Monday, September the 12th at 6. You can go to the website there, longviewtexas.gov/STB, and register. It's a free course, and who knows, it might save somebody's life down the road, just having that little bit of extra knowledge of what to do. Last Friday night, we kind of took it on the nose in East Longview with an unpredicted weather event, right? These things happen. This was an unwarned storm that just came in out of nowhere. The National Weather Service was actually paying attention to these storms as they were developing, and this one just dropped right in on top of us. I spent some time with the National Weather Service out the next day doing the damage assessment with them, and they determined that this was a downburst event with winds in excess or right around 105 miles an hour. You can see what that looks like. The dog was not injured. I did talk to the homeowner the next day. They actually told me he loves bad weather, so it's hard to keep him in the house when there's storms going on out there. But most of that debris you see blowing into the backyard of that house was coming from the apartment complex there at the intersection of Highway 80 and the Loop. It's amazing to watch the teamwork that kicks into action on an event like this. And I'm telling you, by afternoon of the next day, you could hardly tell that anything had ever happened except for some blue tarps that were on some roofs. The power lines were reestablished. Most of the tree limbs were cleared out of the streets. Everybody came together. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a big shout out to the churches that I have listed on there. That's Mobley, First Baptist, New Beginnings, and Grace Creek. They really stepped up in the form of providing some temporary housing for primarily folks of the apartment complex that were displaced because either they lost electricity or part of their roof was missing. So it's great to live in a community that pulls together in times of need like this, and it makes me so proud to live here and work here in Longview. And I just hit the wrong button. I also want to, just real quick before I end tonight, is welcome aboard Catherine Smith. Catherine is our new coordinator for GLOW. GLOW is a new program, as I know you've been made aware, the Greater Longview Optimal Wellness Program. This is a collaborative effort between the city and a lot of other entities here in the county to help navigate people to all of our available resources, ultimately with the goal of keeping people out of the hospitals that don't need to be there and solve some of the hospital overcrowding issues if we can navigate people to the right resources that we also have here in town besides seeking help through the emergency room. So we look forward to good things from Catherine. I know she's going to help out Chief Hooten in the EMS section as we continue to navigate that process and develop that to its full potential. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Chief Stillman? Mr. Carpenter?
Extend my thanks to Kevin and his team. We've had numerous surprise inspections out in District 1, and everything that I've heard has been positive. And I think we're just really happy to have a fire department that's can go out there and identify things that people just walk by all the time. And I do appreciate you for finding out what biannual meant.
What? I'm sorry, what?
Biannual.
Oh, gotcha.
So, but thank that team again.
Yes, sir. I certainly will.
Thank you,
sir.
Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're not on consent agenda. Any items council like pulled off for separate discussion?
H.
Item H. Anything else, council? Mr. Pearl, item H.
Yes, was this, how many square feet is this, and was it bid out?
It was bid out, Mr. Purtle, I know the answer to that, but I don't know the number of square feet. I don't have that with me, but it was at the rear of the transit building, that the garage area that they've recently done, they did some installments to get some ventilation improvements through the windows and replace that glass. It's for that entire work area is my understanding. Now, I don't have the dimensions for you, though.
Okay.
Anything else, council? If not, there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now to zoning. Public hearing to consider application Z22-18. Ms. Choi.
Thank you, Mayor Mack, members of council, and Mr. McPhee. The applicant is requesting a rezone of properties situated east of Northwood Court, west of Patio and Greenleaf Street, from Plan Development 15 to Townhome Zoning District. The applicant would like to develop a neighborhood of townhomes with approximately 9 lots. Greenleaf is classified as a local roadway and maintained by the city of Longview. This type of development is appropriate along this roadway as long as access management is followed. Staff does find that the proposed zoning change is consistent with the comprehensive plan and adjacent uses. Planning and Zoning Commission, along with staff, recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
This requires a public hearing, which is now open. Any questions of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public hearing to consider application filed by Komatsu. Ms. Choi.
Thank you. The next 3 public hearings will be held to consider abandoning 3 50-foot right-of-ways known as Bradley Street, Arnold Street, and a portion of Nimitz Street. Komatsu is requesting this abandonment in order to incorporate all of these streets into their campus and create a safer campus. City staff has reviewed and signed off on this proposed abandonment. We will retain an easement for a water line along Nimitz Street. Staff recommends approval of this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
This requires a public hearing, which is now open. Any questions of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll have public hearing to held on the 2nd Street. Ms. Choi?
Yes, sir. Same thing. Komatsu is requesting the abandonment of Bradley Street. I'd be happy to answer your questions at this time.
What does it mean, abandonment? I mean, do they own it and they're not gonna care for it?
So you need to come up to the microphone. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Hold on. Let me open public hearing first. Public hearing is now open. Now please come forward, ma'am.
I'm sorry. The question is, what do you mean by abandonment? Do they own it and they've decided not to take care of it, or what does that term mean?
So abandoning, the city owns that street,
Okay.
and so they would like for us to abandon it to them. So
Okay.
to close it, yes, ma'am.
That's what I heard. Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Once more, consider request filed by Komatsu for the 3rd Street. Ms. Choi.
Yes, sir, and this is Nimitz Street, and we will acquire an easement for the water line along Nimitz Street. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Public hearing is now open. Any questions of Ms. Choi? Public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Choi. We're going to now consider an ordinance amending the budget for the City of Longview for fiscal year 21-22, allocating fund balance, the amount of $60,000. Josh Gamble.
Thank you, Mayor Mack, members of council, Mr. McPhee. We are asking for consideration of an ordinance to amend the budget for the Information Services Internal Services Fund for the current fiscal year by allocating fund balance in a total amount of $533,308 for the purchase of software, licensing, service, support, network, and cybersecurity equipment for our information systems. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Any question, Mr. Gamble, on this request?
What are we
Mr. Carpenter?
amending? What are we adding? What are we, against the 21-22 budget, what are we asking for?
Sir, we are asking for increased software and licensing for our virtual environment. We're asking for some software that is a requirement for cybersecurity insurance. We're also asking to replace our external firewall, which is going to reach the end of its useful life within the next 12 months. We are also asking to replace 2 of our core switches, which is what everything in the city connects to and makes all the data move around town. Those are going to be end of life within the next 16 to 18 months. And we are also looking to increase the amount of servers for our virtual desktop infrastructure so that we have a more robust disaster recovery solution. So in the event of a server room failure, the city doesn't notice. We are also looking for service and support for our ERP, which is our Enterprise Resource Planning and software solution. We're also looking for software for firewall administration. The IT department manages multiple firewalls. Using one piece of software helps us manage all of them at the exact same time, which minimizes errors. And that would be what those funds are for.
Okay, back to the question. What's budgeted for this year that we're in?
What's in my total budget?
Yes.
This was not included in our budget, but it's 2.9, I believe.
So you're asking for an amendment of $533,000?
Yes, sir. It would come out of our fund balance. We're about to be absorbed into the general fund at the end of this year.
Are we still working with Kilgore?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so is any of that money coming in to help subsidize some of this, or is that included in your budget?
The Kilgore funding is included as a revenue in our budget.
Okay.
None of this equipment is for Kilgore.
How much is that, do you know?
For Kilgore, it's like $112,000 a year.
Okay.
There's certainly some are necessary protections. I mean, those are expiring softwares and then boosting up our security. Is that
Correct.
for my non-technologically advanced understanding?
These are core components of our infrastructure. Without this stuff, nothing works.
Right. And if someone were to break into our system,
Correct.
we would obviously lose lots of data that would be important to citizens as well as city financial information and other things.
Correct.
So it's very important.
Any other questions, Mr. Gamble?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consider a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate a contract with Freese and Nichols. Mr. Shirley.
Thank you, Mayor Mack, members of council, Mr. McPhee. This is an item that was tabled at the last council meeting. At that council meeting, there was a request for additional information. Since that time, I've forwarded a memo, hopefully answering the questions that you had, and I'm here to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Any question, Mr. Shirley?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I think that right now is probably not the right time to be spending this amount of money, so I would still like to maybe call the question to move to take this off and table it indefinitely.
Comment, although I guess you get to call for a second.
I'll second.
Wait, you did what now?
I called the question in regards to voting on this agenda item to table it indefinitely.
So you're making a motion to table it?
Indefinitely, yes, sir. I just think right now during an inflationary and period that we should be looking for ways that we can save some money to maybe allocate some of those funds to more code enforcement or some other things that are needed within our budget. I agree with the premise of updating the comprehensive plan. I just think that at this time, if we're ahead of schedule on some of the items that have been met, I don't think there's really an urgency when our economy is volatile, and I think that we should be going into this with the mindset of saving the taxpayers' money, and so I'd like to call the question to move to remove this indefinitely.
And you have seconded it, Mr. Carpenter. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Let's have a show of hands. All in favor, raise your hand. To table it? And all in favor?
Opposed? Yeah.
Motion carries. It's tabled. We're now to go to budget items. Discussion of the proposed fiscal year budget for the city of Longview. Mr. McPhee.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. First off, over the past few weeks, I've reached out to many of you and fielded questions from you, and I thank you for that time. And hopefully I've provided additional information to each of you that have sufficiently answered those questions that you had. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a comfort level with what my presentation was previously. Tonight, I want to update you, and I want to basically highlight the significant changes, and the significant changes largely have to do with the revenue side of the budgets. So the initial presentation was based upon the Gregg County Appraisal District's estimated values and the Harrison County Appraisal District's estimated values, which is on the slide before you. This is a slide that I presented in July. The actual property tax values came in with an additional revenue of $735,559. So in an effort to still provide the balanced budget that I provided to you originally, we reduced the actual one-time revenues that we were bringing into this year's budget by $735,559. And so just to review that, go ahead. This is an updated slide that differs from the one that we provided before. At the previous presentation, I told council that I suggested bringing in $4.8 million for one-time revenues with the hopes of bringing our one-time expenses and our one-time revenues more in line. So I've reduced the amount of money that we are bringing in to $4.04 million while still reserving $5.53 million for that one-time revenue for the fiscal year 23-24. As I heard from some of you have concerns. The economy, as we've just talked about, there were concerns about the additional flexibility. I think this is prudent to give us additional flexibility as we budget for the FY 23-24 because none of us know exactly what's going to happen. This also brings in line our one-time revenues closer to our one-time expenses. The previous slide that I presented on July 11th actually stated that we were about $950,000 or $1 million in one-time expenses and one-time revenues difference, and this brings us down to a much more manageable gap of $255,000. As you can see, this is the revised and updated slide that still provides for the proposed budget that was proposed at $89.8 million. You'll see, again, the property taxes are $28.8 million. The sales tax are still $2 million in excess of the property taxes, and the remainder is in fees and fines. This is the remainder of the budget calendar before you for August 25th, which is the ratification and adoption of the proposed budget, and then your consideration September 8th for LEADCO's budget adoption. With that, that concludes what I have prepared for presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any question, Mr. McPhee, on this? On our third page of our general fund reports, we've got a number of items here. They're small in dollar amounts, but they're large in what we can do with those dollars. I do not believe we need to spend $15,000 on a new table for the room back there. If there's not enough chairs, people can sit on the wall on Wednesday mornings, okay? That money could be used for some other things. I would like to know what you're proposing to do with the $20,000 for renovating what in this hall back here.
So actually, just in response, the city manager, city secretary, city attorney's office remodel that have renovations and remodeling don't have a distinct plan. I have preliminary ideas that I've visited about. But actually, when I was named the interim assistant city manager, the one place that they had to put me because of the information technology moving into the former city secretary's office, the city secretary's office had been relocated to the city manager's wing because we didn't have an assistant city manager. They placed me in the mayor's and city council office. And that is an office that where typically city council and the mayor could use as a conference room, would receive your mail. Right now the mail is actually being retrieved from the conference room, which I've been involved in conferences, and it's caused actually some interruptions to those conferences to get the mail. So I was trying to get that restored. The other thing is that would allow me to move the assistant city manager into what has previously been the assistant city manager's office at the times it was active in the past. The other additional change that I had is I wanted the public information officer to be located in the city manager's office wing so that we could improve communications not only from within the organization, but to the community as well. And that's actually what that's for.
So where are you going to put the city secretary now?
Well, that would depend on whether or not it would get approved, and that I would have to visit with her about what those ideas were and what would be acceptable. That's part of the money that's in there for the renovations.
I'm looking at another item here too.
Sure.
And between all these items here, I'm probably looking at $30,000, $40,000, which is pennies on the budget, but that money could be used for something else that I want to discuss with in a minute, along with the $94,000 that we've tabled for a while. So my deal on it, if it ain't broke, we don't need to fix it right now, because we've got other things that I think we need to spend these funds on. And you know, it just doesn't seem right when I've got other things that we'll talk about here in just a minute that I want to spend that on. And I don't see anything that's blocking back there. I've been there numerous times. I don't see anybody that's in a bad mind. That's kind of like the table in there. You know, that's $15,000 that could go to something else I want to discuss
Absolutely.
in a minute.
Sure.
And it just seems like we're putting money in a budget to spend it where we need to spend it somewhere else. Badly need to spend it somewhere else. And we'll go through that when we get through in a second. The other item is over developmental services. I don't think we need to spend $7,500 on magnetic locks. I've been through that building numerous times, and the way the door arrangements are in there, you can go in the front door and probably cover over half that building without having to even worry about those doors that were put in there last year at probably the cost of what, $10,000, $8,000 to $10,000. And now we're going to spend another $7,500 in an area that I've walked through and looked at that handles the inspection department and code compliance. And those folks are almost out of that office 90% of the time during the day. So everybody else, especially on the left side of the building, is wide open. So I really think that's another $7,500 that I could use for what else I want to propose it for in just a little bit. And I think that's, you know.
And let me just provide a little bit of clarification on some of those improvements. The actual security assessments that were done, PD was involved in determining how to make the building more secure. It's actually a scaled back version of that. They actually wanted it more access control.
I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done.
No, I understand.
But I'm going back
Yes,
to
sir.
what Michelle
Sure.
said. We've got more needs than we've got wants right now, and I would rather that money go to something else. If we had a problem there, if somebody broke in, somebody run in and done something in there, I mean, I can understand it. We've got it here too. And, you know, when we get the money spent where I would like to spend some of the other money, I can see that. But right now, like I say, I've got more needs than I've got wants.
Sure.
And
It's clearly a preventive measure to prevent something from occurring. So.
Yeah.
Could we ask Chief Boone if he thinks that's pertinent to get right now, or if it could be tabled for a while, if PD ran that?
I'm not sure whether or not he is familiar with the
Okay.
security assessments or not.
If it's
Okay.
a security issue, it's a security issue. It doesn't matter how pertinent or impertinent it is. If it's a security issue, it's a security issue. And if they say it's something needs to be done, I'm not an authority to say it doesn't. And if an occurrence were to happen because we didn't do it, then we're looking pretty silly for not spending $7,500 when they say we need to do it.
Are our
So-
current measures not meeting those needs, though?
If they were, they would have asked to do this.
Well, did we not just spend some money over there?
Yeah.
Tim, we spend money all over the place,
No,
but if
I mean-
security says we need to have security done, unless you're becoming a security expert and you want that responsibility, which I don't.
I'm just,
But
Mayor,
the
just
problem is,
asking the
Mayor,
question.
is we weren't brought in on this, and if they wanted to secure that building, they had two openings they could have secured that whole building with. The opening going past Angela's office into that area, and the opening right there beside Michael's. that would have stopped the whole backside of that building. But anyway, we put 4 or 5 or 6 doors in there with walls across them.
Right.
Now we're going to spend another $7,500 to put keypads on there.
Because you didn't like the first plan doesn't keep it still being unsecure. If it's insecure,
Yeah.
it needs to be taken
I
care
know
of.
that's
The point is it was done.
Yeah.
And it was done with whomever's approval, but the point is, if it's not secure, it's our responsibility to make sure our city staff is secure and taken care of.
I don't think any of us are arguing your premise of making sure that staff is safe. I think we all want staff to be safe and our citizens to be safe. I think we're just simply asking if the plan called for it to be immediate. I know on most plans in regards to security measures, it either says immediately or gives you a time range within months. So I was just simply asking for the analytics behind that.
Well, I'm just curious as to what is more important than their security. So I can't wait to see what you want to spend it on. So feel free to continue because I want to see what's more important than
okay.
that.
We'll go there.
So that's what I'm
I want to spend it on the employees of this town that make $15 an hour less. Mr. Wade brought that up last time, and that spurred a few of us up, and we got to looking at that. Now, those people, I'm sure there's 50 to 100 of them in this town that make less than $15 an hour. By the time their deductions are taken away, their city government stuff's taken away, you know, I've got it broke down here on one of them. One of them makes $14 and something. You take a couple of bucks off of that for his government stuff he's got to meet, and you take the 7% off of that the city, he's got to match for the city retirement stuff. That old boy's making less than 12 bucks an hour, and he can't make it on that. We've got an opportunity via Mr. Wade bringing it up to our attention that we can put that money somewhere where it needs to be better and maybe hold or retain a lot of those people so we won't be so behind on employees on that. Now, that's where I would like to spend some of this money, and I would like to have had staff bring that to us before we had to look into it and figure it out. And you were asked about those people. That bothers me more than anything. We've taken care of our fire department and the police department, but we haven't taken care of public works or a lot of these other places there. That's money that we could use on that. Now, I don't think there's a big security risk in developmental services. They handle very little or no funds, and putting locks on these doors, you're going to be locking off a section of it where there's hardly nobody during the day, and the other side of it is wide open. So I would have liked to have gone through there and listened to that. You know, we're getting thrown with a lot of numbers here that we don't have any input in, but we're told that we need to spend this money on. And that's not really, I don't think that's how it should be. I think we should have been brought in on some of this before you come in here and say, well, we're going to spend $94,000 or we're going to spend $25,000 or whatever. This is what it's going to cost. Yes, and go on. I need that money for other things for the people here. Those people that work for this town are the ones that take care of the citizens that put us in office. And that's what I want these funds to go for, you know. So, I don't, developmental services has been there a lot longer than I have, and I hadn't seen any problems there yet. And there's only one way in that building right now, and that's through the front door. So that's not going to stop somebody from coming through the front door and raising all kinds of havoc, because they're going to get there before they go anywhere else, because you can't get in that building any other way, because all the other doors are locked. So, you know, Andy, you can argue with me all day long if you want to.
I want to know where you want to spend it.
I want that money for something that we need to make a point with to people that we work for us, that work for the city.
I don't think that there's anybody up here that doesn't want the citizens, the city employees that work here to be compensated and well paid for, any more than we want anyone to be unsafe. We're not trying to say you have to choose one or the other, but you're wanting everybody to choose one or the other. I'm not going to choose either one. I'm going to take care of both.
Okay.
We can find
That's great.
$7,500 to do our safety measures as necessary. And if we need to find more money for the people that are making $15 an hour, that's part of the budget process. I'm not going to choose one over the other. I'm going to do both, because that's what we do. But we're not going to leave
That wasn't part of the
somebody.
budget process until we brought it up. That's the
Excuse me
problem.
again?
That was not part of the budget process until me and some other council members asked for that. Then
Which
it
is
got
why
brought
we
in.
have these discussions
That's
every
right.
month, twice a month. That's why we have these discussions.
I know. But that's where I want those funds to go to.
But you see, Steve, here's the issue. You bring it up in a public meeting. We bring it up before the meeting ever takes place. So they go and do things that we ask them to do during the week while we're in our doing our budget, our looks.
You don't want to go there, Doc.
So,
You don't want to go there.
You can go anywhere you want to go.
You don't want to go there. You don't want to go there.
I can talk to Mr.
He's turning on the
McPhee.
camera again.
You don't want to
Say
go
it
there.
again?
He's turning on the camera again.
Oh, we can do it however you want to do it, but when we see an issue, we discuss it and we come up with new solutions. But I don't want to choose who has to have security or who gets a pay raise, because we're already trying to do the pay raises. We do across the board pay raise for every employee, City of Longview, and a $500 endowment as well. And if we don't feel that's enough, then we tell Mr. McPhee, find us some more. But I'm not going to say, find me more by taking away security measures for one of our departments. That's not how I'm going to approach it. You all can approach it however you want to. That's how I'm going to approach it. So I'm going to say, find a way to do both, but I don't want to see you suffer, a department suffer, because if something were to happen, then I think we would be negligent in our position. Ms. Noddy?
Yeah, I have a question. Good evening, everyone. Have we taken these type of security measures at other offices, or?
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Okay, so most of, if not all, I mean, they all should be secure, but.
I'm just going
what are
to,
we-
yes, I know we did it at Public Works. I know we've done it in our building that we actually, at Glover Krim, we've done it there. PD obviously has theirs. The City Hall has that access. I guess, I don't know whether or not Parks has, I don't think Parks has any. I'm looking at Scott Karen to find the answer for that. But those are the ones I know of that have been implemented, and some in parts. I mean, some not completely.
I have a question, Mayor.
Mr. Carpenter?
In the bond issue, I see some more funds coming up for the splash pad at Broughton, the pavilion at Broughton, and the retractable bleachers at Broughton. Did we necessarily maybe pull those out of the agreement with RLM? How did we get the?
Yes, I believe we awarded the project within the funds available. Scott, you're free to comment on that in detail.
So those actually were projected to be bond. We were over budget, we backed them out, and now we're going to pick them up within the regular budget.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Those were items that we had identified originally back with the Comprehensive Planning Advisory Committee, and then also proposed as part of that project. But, you know, those numbers were identified in 2017. The project wasn't bid until 2020.
Right.
So.
Okay, so that basically is getting us more completion.
Right. Our hope, you know, we feel that we have an obligation to provide the services and the items that were listed in the bond, and
Yes, sir.
we're trying to take every measure that we can to accomplish all of those items that were listed. Yes, sir.
Great. That's what I want to know. Thank you, sir. That makes sense.
Any other questions of Mr. McPhee on this?
How much of the ARPA funds have we spent, and where's it been spent at so far? How much of it is allocated for this year's budget out of the 8.5 million that we got in May?
I don't have that in front of me. I can get that specific
done that
report
way
to you.
last year then?
If I believe that's in the slide, but that is not part of this year's slide, so I don't have. This
Okay,
is,
so what
there
are we
you go,
gonna
the
use
original
those-
funds.
What are we going to use those funds for if we don't have them on our budget then?
No, we're still allocating $4 million in this year's budget. That we are still doing that. There is still remaining, my recommendation is to defer the $700,000 in addition to the 4.8. So we're still going to have $5.5 million in ARPA funds that are available for the coming fiscal years. That's where they're.
Of what we've been given so far.
Yes.
Because we haven't been awarded all of
And
it.
no, they have, this is with everything.
Right.
This is with everything. So $5.5 million is unspent, and these are what the funds were spent for.
Okay. So, but you'll give us a detail on what's been spent in 2021, 22.
This slide should reflect that, but yes, it should reflect that. Those were brought in as, similar to how I've described them in my budgets, those were brought in as one-time revenues. And then there were some drainage projects as well that we used some of the match for, the Sabine River Authority grant that we received.
Any other questions at this point?
One other one that is, I'm sure Marianne or you can speak to this. The two largest departments, of course, are public safety with the police and fire. And one of their budgets, we have a vacancy line.
Yes.
And one of their budgets, we don't. What's the, why is that?
They should both have vacancy factors. So there are a couple of different areas associated. How many different budgets are associated with PD? There's 2 or 3 different ones, and they should have some vacancy factors, and fire department should be as well. And we'll talk about vacancy factors just a little bit. Obviously,
Excuse me, sir. You have $1 million in the vacancy on 51901, which is police side. You have $360,000 in 51901 on the other side.
On fire.
Yes, sir.
Right, and so roughly, just for rough numbers, so we're talking about that represents the fire department's historically averaged, and Chief, you may speak better to this, either one of you correct me, please, but have averaged about 4 firemen per year, and so that those vacancies reflect kind of what they've run consistently over the year. And it's based on trends, obviously, and so the police department's is as well. So we're hoping that we can't reap any of that, and we have to, we want them to fill up. But in budgeting, to be conservative in what you're budgeting in revenues, you always put that in because you know there's going to be delays in bringing people on board, there's going to be delays in finding people, and so that gives you additional fiduciary flexibility as you're budgeting for the coming year.
But you must budget for a full staff.
Yes.
You have
That
to.
gives you the swing too if you've got delays coming out of the academy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's
Great.
exactly what it's for.
Okay, I just was trying to correlate the two numbers to.
And it's based on those departments' experiences.
So that goes back in the general fund to do that.
Well, it's actually a deduct in expenditure. So our year-end estimates, obviously, we throw out the vacancy factors because at that point, it's really about what we've budgeted and where we're at with the existing budget. So it's just a budgeting tool for budgeting. It's not something that people are held to by
Right.
any stretch.
That's great. The only other question that I've asked you, and I'll ask you one more time, do you think that that we could consolidate our Sam's Club memberships? Because, I mean, they're all over the board.
The thing
That's
I will
little,
tell,
but it's just like.
No, we absolutely could do that. One of the things that departments typically don't shop on the same day and don't go, and if you have one card, we have 14 different business units throughout the city.
Right.
And so that's part of the reason is that flexibility for staff. When they need something, they can go get it within that department. And so, and lots of those divisions are remote, and so there is some efficiencies that you gain from that, but it does have an additional cost. Yes, sir.
And you can only have so many cards off of one unit, according by Sam's rules.
Okay. Sure. We would absolutely look into it. That, I did ask the question. We had a discussion about that, and everybody was like, well, that's centralized purchasing. And unfortunately, centralized purchasing is another layer of bureaucracy to an extent.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? We'll move to the next discussion, the proposed fee resolution. Mr. McPhee.
So within the budget book and proposal that you have before you, There were a number of different fee adjustments and changes, the majority of which were associated with Maud Cobb Activity Complex. Because of that actual condition, we had asked that Mr. Hara provide a memo to council that detailed the reasons for that, but any of the department directors are here to answer any questions you have about the proposed fee changes.
Any question on the proposed fee schedule? The fee resolution, let me make it proper. Thank you. If there are none, we will.
So that was basically a rate adjustment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Seems very reasonable.
Yeah,
my only-
there's
yeah.
nothing.
They did
out
a
of the
good job
ordinary.
comparing what places we have in, who the competitors are, and still made it affordable and accessible. So,
I think that's important that we continue to do that because that's beneficial for the citizens as well as those who come in and out of our community. So, all right, we're out of the community interest. Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Mayor. Gregton has set an all-time record in their Thursday distribution. 356 families, I believe it was this last time, and they'll be added again on August the 18th. Then our city East Texas Food Bank will be added this Friday, the 12th, from 8 to 12 over at the exhibit building. Come help or come pick up, whatever you need to do. School buses, everybody pay attention. They're out there about us, and I'm sure Chief Boone and his team are watching the school zones. I want everybody to slow down and think about the children exiting and entering the buses. Wellness Point Community Center is having a back-to-school health fair over at the high school at Pine Tree, 9 to noon on Saturday the 13th, no charge. Activities will include sports and health screenings for kids, dental and optical information, free school supplies, and much more. You're welcome to attend that on Fairmont on the 13th. And last but not least, in October of this year, our very own Pine Tree Independent School District will celebrate the 175th anniversary. That makes Pine Tree the second oldest district in the state of Texas, and there'll be more information coming as we get to October. So, thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Snyder.
Good evening, everyone. Last week or a couple of weeks ago, we had a Estate 101 workshop. Great turnout. Thank you again to the panelists that were there. A lot of questions were asked, and they received answers, and everybody left wanting to have another one. So thank you guys again for a great job. Also attended the community pep rally for these guys. Great group of little guys. I understand that they fell a little short, but ended with a record of 16-2. So just want to applaud them for a great job in representing our city. Thank you.
Mr. Wade.
Yes. I think we need to fact check that Pine Tree being a proud logo. We might need to put someone on that one. I just want to, welcome all the kids back to school this next week. And to all of our citizens, please be aware of the school buses and school zones, and especially those in District 3. I'm not sure if that one over on close to Highway 80, is that the what's the name of that school? Montessori School. That's a real traffic catch there with the children in and out. So to everyone traveling that area, please be safe.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chihara.
Nothing from me?
Ms. Gamboa.
I would just like to thank our police and fire again for protecting our community from all sorts of dangers. And I would just like to wish all the school district a happy back to school and remind kids to be cheerful in their education, because there's nothing better than that. So,
Mr. Purtle.
I want to thank the city and the people that are working on Fairmont over there. The heat is unbearable, and it's very, very hot, and the traffic is hindering them a lot. They are working and trying to do the best they can, and I think they're not going to get us through before school starts, but they're making a heck of a road over there. So you got to think about those guys out there in that heat on that concrete, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's getting poured. So I want to thank all those guys in the city that's working with them, because there's a lot of city folks out there too.
Mr. McPhee. Well, as you arrived this evening to our meeting, you may have noticed a new piece of artwork on our campus. It's titled Pegasus 4 Liftoff. This project was made possible by Arts Longview, the Rosa May Griffith Foundation, the Texas Commission of the Arts, and with support from the city of Longview. So go by and look at our little Pegasus statue. We have a housing wait list. Applications for the Longview Housing Authority wait list will be accepted from 8 a.m. to noon on Thursday, August the 18th. And Downtown Live, Longview's weekly free concert series event, every fall and spring, will kick off its 10th year on September the 9th and September the 10th. The concerts will continue every Friday through October at Heritage Plaza in downtown Longview. It's a great place to be on Friday and Saturdays. If you don't have something to do, come out and do it. It's a lot of fun. We will now convene an executive session, consult with attorney under Texas Government Code Section 551.071, receive advice from legal counsel about pending or contemplating litigation. We will not return after the executive session, so we are adjourned.